right, y'all. Welcome to episode 7 of Sideways Rain, season 2. We're excited to be here. Do you ever have one of those moments where you're doing everything right? You're hitting your goals, you're bringing in business, even getting compliments on your work, and then out of nowhere, the rug gets pulled out from you. That's what today's guest, keynote speaker and emotional intelligence expert, Rich Bracken, calls his Sideways Rain. It'll hit hard, but it's also what pushed him to build something entirely on his own. We'll dig into that and much more today, but without further ado, here comes the rain. Like I said at the top, today we're talking with Rich Bracken. Rich is a keynote speaker, emotional intelligence expert, and someone I first met at an MPI event in Las Vegas a few years ago. I got up the courage after he came off stage to just go over and say hello, and it's been kismet ever since. So, Rich, I could do a horrible job of introducing you or just let you do it yourself. Who is Rich Bracken?
Oh, I think that needs to be its own separate episode, to be honest. You hit on a couple things. First of all, thank you for having me on, and thank you for your friendship over all these years. So I am a keynote speaker, executive coach, MC, DJ, and founder of Unstoppable Solutions, which is my company that I do all of the above. Former event planner turned keynote speaker, coming from a corporate background. We'll share some of that here in a little bit, but I'm excited to talk with you. And I should have brought an umbrella. I thought about bringing an umbrella, but I thought it'd be too predictable with my brand of being a cartoon character. So I'm excited to kind of weather the rain with you.
I like the instinct though, because nobody's ever brought one yet.
Dang it. Okay. Starting from the top. I'll go real quick.
Rich, take us back to that moment we talked about at the top. You're doing great work, bringing in clients, and then suddenly you're let go. What was going through your head at that time?
Oh my gosh, I remember like it was yesterday, and thankfully it wasn't. But I was working as a business development manager at a law firm, and I'm one of those people that, corporate always seemed like the right route to go for me, and I felt like my education and my upbringing, everything kind of sang to that path. And so, but at the same time, I had this creative ability, the ability to say, why not? Try new ideas, try things that are a little bit different. I think any company that says, well, this is always the way we've done it, and we're just going to keep doing it that way. I always call it the Blockbuster Video effect. They did the same thing and it didn't work out too well for them. So I'm always one that, not in a disrespectful way or not in a rebellious way, but I always want to do better for my organization, for my team, for myself. And so I had tried a few things while also doing the typical work, and everything was working very, very well. And what I got the feeling of was that my direct supervisor and their direct supervisor really didn't care for that, because it was outside of the norm of what they had built over the past decade. So the fact that it was gaining popularity and gaining momentum and it was bringing in business, and I just felt like there was always this weird thing, but I just kept doing what I was doing because it was working, and I was getting great feedback from the people that I was serving. And then one day I get if you've ever been in corporate, and hopefully you've never been in corporate and had this email come through or this meeting come through, but it's quick check-in.
Ooh.
And so it was, in this car, exactly, right? Quick check-in. It was at a conference room. And when I walked in and one of the HR people was sitting at the table and my supervisor was on Zoom, I knew what had happened. My heart's even like beating right now thinking about it. And it was just this thing that I think had been building up, but I didn't think I was at risk for anything.
Sure.
And I was let go that day. And I never saw it coming, did not feel it was happy. I didn't feel like I was at risk. I felt like I was doing a great job, just trying to be the best I could be for everybody else around me. And I knew that it was the wrong decision that they made, for me internally. But at the same time, when I walked back to my office, and of course the HR person came with me, and I was boxing up my stuff, and we had glass wall offices, and I saw 2 or 3 people look up and see what was going on. And they came out, they were like, what is going on? I said, well, I just got let go. And people ran back to their offices, hopped on the phone, and started just going berserk. And word got around super quick that it had happened. And so when I started getting phone calls and text messages as I'm just in the parking garage, hadn't even gotten in my car and driven away yet. I'm in my car, I'm getting phone calls and text messages and emails like, what is happening? What happened? Why is this happening? We're furious. It helped soften the blow, but it was still a huge gut check.
Yeah.
So in hindsight, it was the best thing in the entire world.
Yeah. So how did you separate that emotional response from that logical response to say like, yeah, everybody's got my back. This is amazing. I feel good that I have this support, but I still have to go home and tell my wife what happened.
Right. And I think that separation was hard. I will say, and I remember how I reacted when I walked in the room. I remember what I said. And I was, as an emotional intelligence expert, I will say my self-management was not the highest that day.
Mm.
But when those calls started coming in and when those text messages started coming in, I had about a 30-minute drive home. It gave me the opportunity to really sit in the moment and say, okay, these two people made a decision that what I'm now seeing is that 25 and counting people thought was a horrible decision, me included.
Yep.
And so I took some solace in that. There's the objective thing, like I'm out of a job. Now what? I've got to make money for my family. I've got to support my family. I've got to figure out what the next step is. And but it gave me the opportunity to sit in, okay, what am I proud of?
Sure.
What am I taking away from this situation as opposed to letting them have the upper hand on my emotions? Mm-hmm. What am I walking away with? What are the good things that I did? What can I be proud of? What would I brag on? What are the skills that I learned and that I'm still maintaining out of this unfortunate separation? And so once I sat in that, I wasn't going to say that I pulled in my driveway, like everything's going to be fine and I'm in a great mood. Like it took time.
Yep.
But the fact that I went that route on my thoughts on the way home and let it start marinating was everything. That helped everything in the process.
Quick aside, after that point in time, have you ever gone back to working for anybody else? Have you just been doing your own thing since then?
So since then, I did work at a couple of other companies. And again, I think there was I think inherently within me, I always knew that I was meant for something more. My grandfather was a very successful entrepreneur. My dad has owned his own business and still at almost 80 years old is still working for himself. And so inherently there's this entrepreneurial thread within me. And I will also say that through the course of my career, people, every now and then somebody will come up to me in the course of in a job or in a connection at my workplace and say like, why are you here? Why aren't you doing something bigger? Why aren't you on TV? Why aren't you doing these things? Because that's just my personality. Yeah. And I was like, oh, I enjoy what I do. And I mean, I'm crying on the inside. I'm like, they're right. And so I think from a practical standpoint, I wanted to make sure that I was supporting my family. So I went back to work for another company and did for a couple of stints. But that crossroads, I think, is what planted in me the idea that, number one, I wasn't happy with what I was doing overall. Yes, I was successful. Yes, it was fun. Yes, I had some people that I enjoyed working with. But in my heart of hearts, it wasn't what fueled me. It wasn't my passion. It wasn't my why. Mm-hmm. And so I think that started growing from that meeting. So if I can officially take the opportunity to just thank the two people that fired me, thank you.
Yes.
I appreciate you doing that because now, up until about 2 years ago, I was working for other people. And then I finally decided, because I was building was speaking on the side, and that was gaining momentum. And that's how you and I met, was I was speaking on the side and got this great opportunity with MPI. And I knew after that event, I mean, you can't not look at yourself, Usher opened for me. I'm on the same stage as Usher. I'm on a billboard in Las Vegas. Like, that's huge.
Yep.
And so I think these things that started happening along the way after that happened really launched me in this idea of there is something bigger and better for me. Not from an egotistical standpoint, but you need to be doing the thing that you're passionate about.
Yep.
And so 2 years ago, I set up my own company, said, okay, this is growing to a point that I've been doing this with about 25% effort. What if I went in 100%? What would happen? And in the last 2 years, yes, as an entrepreneur, that's always a roller coaster, but I've never been happier. I've never felt more fulfilled. I'm doing what I love to do. I was on a stage this week in Las Vegas, and before I walked on stage, I'm thankful every time because it is what I am meant to do. And when I look back at my LinkedIn work history, I'm like, no disrespect to any of those companies and no disrespect to people that work in corporate. I love what I do, and I don't think I could ever go back to that. I know I couldn't.
Yeah, you certainly got the mindset for it. And just, we did a ton of talking pre-show. The way you talk about the business, the way you pursue it, the way you ask questions about like, how can I be better, certainly sends that message. I'm going to steal some advice since I've got you here and I have this emotional intelligence expert here.
Yeah.
I recently came across some stuff that said, essentially said like a lot of high performers and entrepreneurs are driven because of anxiety and this feeling that if you're not doing something, if you're doing nothing, you're not accomplishing anything. One, is part of that true? And then two, how do you fight that so you can get the downtime you need when you deserve it? Because sometimes going 24/7 can just completely burn you out.
Oh, I agree wholeheartedly. So I think I think it's a true statement, but it's an unfortunately true statement. I think so many people are driven by anxiety or driven by, I have this metaphoric vision of like running away from a storm.
Yeah.
Like if I slow down, I'm done for.
Yeah.
And so I think there is that panic or that anxiety or that stress that drives people. But when we think about motivation, I used to be driven by that. And both in my corporate life and then also, as I first started setting up my business, I'm like, if I don't work all the time and if I'm not chasing every opportunity and if I'm not taking advantage of everything, then, I'm missing out. And when I started thinking more about the quality versus quantity of things, I think there's always going to be something to do. There's always going to be an email to send. There's always going to be a phone call to make and a social media post to put up. And there's always going to be something.
Yep.
But when I started shifting my mindset to what are my goals, what are the quality things I want to go do instead of just doing everything, I was more motivated by the achievement so I'm running towards the achievement and not away from the stress.
Love that.
Now, will I say that there are times where stress motivates me to get more things done in a day? Sure.
Yeah.
But overall, once I started going after the positive instead of running away from the negative, it changed my energy levels.
That's a great perspective.
Because I agree, like that 24/7 mentality, that hustle culture, like stop.
Yeah.
The hustle culture is a false identifier for what is going to turn into burnout culture if you're not careful.
Sure. Yeah, especially in the social media world where you're sort of inundated with these quote unquote high performers. And to be honest, somebody's always going to be doing better or earning more. You just kind of got to block that out and do the best that you can for you. But I love that. I love that metaphor of run towards something, not away from something. I think that's a good reset that we can all have.
Absolutely.
So that moment in your past, you created, obviously some urgency. That's the storm. Doesn't feel good in the moment. You work through it. But what came next is what really defines you, Rich. You talk a lot about emotional intelligence as a differentiator. What shifted for you when you started managing that differently after this big seismic shift?
That's a great question. I will say that I learned about emotional intelligence prior to that instance happening. And I actually learned about it because I was burning myself out, trying to chase success, trying to keep up with everything. And I landed myself in the ER. And so when my doctor was telling me about emotional intelligence, because I thought I had a heart attack that day, and he was telling me that it was just a panic attack.
Wow. And
so he mentioned to me that he was reading this book called Emotional Intelligence 2.0. Obviously, he's an emergency room doctor. He's got a very stressful job as well. And so he told me about this book. I started reading it, and it became a game changer for me. Now, I will say that like emotional intelligence, the application of it was dependent on the day. And so there were days that I was very highly emotionally intelligent. There were days that I was not as strong, but the nice thing about emotional intelligence is that you can flex it up when you need to. It's not like IQ where it hits at a certain point and you're done and then you can't improve it anymore. And so I will say that in that time, like I mentioned previously, throughout the time that I was there, I was managing my own emotional intelligence because I could have very much given way to the negativity within kind of the underlying story and the underlying sentiment, but I chose not to. And so when it caught up to me in this fateful check-in call, it really changed things for me. And I think more and more as I moved past that situation, I understood again, it was almost like a refresher or a reminder of how important my emotional intelligence was to me.
Yeah.
And as I've grown since then, and as I've stepped into this entrepreneurial solopreneur mentality and position, it's more important than ever. because I am my CEO, CFO, CMO, CTO. Like I am all the things.
Yep.
And so even in one position, we can burn out if we're not careful. So let alone taking on 10 or 12 hats that I've got to wear now, it's more important now than ever that I check myself on a lot of different occasions. But I will say that the and to break it down from a simplicity standpoint, my self-awareness, my identification of my emotions is higher than it's ever been. It's something that I recognize my emotions when they happen because I give it a deeper explanation and a more broad emotional vocabulary. My self-management, it's probably, I think, my weakest one, but it has been improving because I can understand what sets off a negative emotion or sets off a too positive emotion and how to keep those things in check. And then my social awareness, how I interact with other people, has always been my social awareness and my relationship management, how I'm dealing with other people, has always been my strongest side because I'm a people pleaser. I am a person, I'm a high empath, high sensitive person. Like I'm always tuned into what other people need and what they're feeling. And so that's never really been a problem. But I will say that is also what I've gone to as my main gold mine of potential and ability. Is my ability to develop relationships, my ability to care about other people, my ability to, we talked about just being a good person. Like I want to be supportive and good to everyone. And that's where my self side comes into play, but also my social side. Like I want to make sure that people know that I care about them and that I'm genuine. I'm not, this cardboard animatronic cutout that gets up on stage and just does the same thing every single time. When I get on stage, I want people to know that I care about them, that I love them, that I want to see them succeed, that I want to see them not as stressed out. I told people this week in Las Vegas before my presentation, they said, well, what can we expect? Because some of them had heard that I spoke the year before. And I said, I'm probably going to make you cry, but it's for good reason.
Sure.
And I will say that there was one woman in the room that earlier in the week professed on the microphone that she was a cynic, that she was judgmental, she was a realist, she didn't think anybody was special, she was very protected, very guarded.
Yeah.
And when I got done with my presentation, she was the first one on the microphone and she could not get through her comments because she was in tears because something had changed in her. That's why I do what I do. Would I have ever done that in the previous position that I got fired from? Absolutely not. But it was my ability now to do those kinds of things and leverage my emotional intelligence to help other people.
What a self-challenge. I mean, it's part of you had to know when you said that out loud, like if I say this out loud, it's going to be even harder to get them to cry. But you're like, I'm going to do it. I'm coming out here and I'm coming out.
Like I'm not doing it to depress you or make you feel bad about yourself. Like people need, and truly, like I laugh because I used to love Dane Cook and he would talk about like everybody needs to cry.
Yeah.
And it's true. Yeah. Like we all need to have those therapeutic cries, men and women. Like it's gone are the days that we have to be these tough, rub some dirt on it people, no matter what gender you are.
Yeah.
I think it's important that we are more in tune with our emotion, that we're more vulnerable, because the more we callous ourselves, the more there's still this underlying sentiment that is going to be there.
Sure.
And whether you deal with it or not, it's going to show its face at some point, and you've got to be ready for that.
Yeah. So one of the things I've had challenges with myself is, well, first it was like recognition. Emotional intelligence also is recognizing when you're not being emotionally intelligent. And so there are these moments where I'm like, I am not my best self today. I'm not coming to this conversation, or I'm not coming home my best self. And sometimes I'll just say, that's just what it is. Like, I'm not going to be able to fix this. Is there a tool or a mantra or a method to just sort of reset and just say like, yeah, it was a rough day, but like, let's recognize that emotion and move forward and show up as a better person in my next interaction.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are several things that I personally use and that I also coach and speak about as well. I will say that on a consistent basis, and this is, I've used it as like meditation and visualization. I also have called it an energy audit. And so throughout the day, so first thing in the morning, like check in with yourself, take 2 minutes, 3 minutes, just check in. How am I feeling? Did I get enough sleep? Am I feeling okay? How's my body? How's my mind? How's my energy? How are my emotions?
Sure.
And then kind of take stock in what that is at the point, because we're not always going to wake up as our best selves either. If I have a bad night of sleep, I'm slower to the take than anything else.
Yep.
And so that's going to affect everything else. So establish who you are first thing in the morning. And then around lunchtime, take another 3 to 5 minutes. Check in. How am I feeling now? Compare and contrast it against how you started the morning feeling. And then look in between those two. What happened? Did you have a meeting that soured your mood? Did you have a project come on your plate that now stresses you out?
Yeah.
And in those moments where you can identify what those triggers are, how did you respond? And to your statement, was that your favorite or best version of yourself? And if not, what would you have done differently? Or what would you currently do differently to turn the tide?
Sure.
Because at the end of the day, we are all in charge of our emotions. I tell people all the time, like, anybody who says they make me so mad, like, no, they did something that you chose to be mad about.
Yep.
It has nothing to do with it. And so at the end of the day, our emotions are up to us. Now, will they sometimes have more control over other decisions that we make? Sure. Yeah. I had an instance 2 weeks ago where I just had a bad day. And this is the answer that I'm trying to give you is here in real time. I can sit and say, well, I was really down Wednesday and it's now Thursday. Like I can't get out of this. I'm just going to be miserable. No, I stopped that night and said, okay, the day's almost done. I'm going to wake up tomorrow and it's not going to be dramatically better, but it's going to be somewhat better. And here's what I'm going to do about it.
Sure.
So I fell asleep thinking that. And I woke up I didn't go from down in the dumps to, rainbows and sunshine the next morning, but there was hope. And sometimes that's all we need. Hope for improvement, hope for change, hope for some sort of control and turning the corner on it. That's sometimes all you need.
Yeah, that's great. There's so much I want to touch on what you just said that they made me mad. I think what you said there is great. They didn't make you anything. You made you that way. And I often have this conversation with my kids too. Like they'll say, my sister is so annoying. And I'd say, well, you can't label her that. Maybe what she did annoyed you, but you get to control how you react to that. And that's just like, they're like, what? They're like, no, right. she's annoying. Like, okay.
Right.
You're 10. We'll work through this.
Kids are too honest and simplistic at times. I know my heart too.
But one thing that's helped me a ton is having a partner that's also emotionally intelligent and being candid with them about those moments. So like one thing my wife's been able to do for me lately, just sort of out of the blue, is she did it to me the other day. She's like, we were having a great day. Like, what happened in the last 15 minutes? She's like, did you start thinking about work? And I was like, holy crap. Yes. I got in my own head and I started thinking about something else, and just like, she knew me so well that the nuance was there, and she was emotionally intelligent to know like, hey, label the thing that it is. Let's get past this and get back to where we were before. So I think having a partner that can help work through it too is super helpful.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely critical. I agree with you. And kudos to your wife for being that aware of what's going on, and kudos to you both for having that dynamic.
Yeah.
But I think for anyone, I think there's two different things that I would love to convey here too. Yes, that is absolutely critical. One, it should start with you and identifying those things. And sometimes, and I've been in the same situation too, where something changes and probably subconsciously I know that, but on the surface, I'm like, I just got to get through this, or I got to get through this thing. And I'm not paying attention. So I'm not being as self-aware as I need to be.
Yep.
But what I will say is that one, the ability to identify that and not necessarily solve it individually, but reach out to someone else who can help you work through it. I will say one of the biggest differentiators of my life over the past decade is that I've curated this personal board of directors. And it's people that I know that I could call up, text anytime, and they may not be able to hop on the phone right then, but they will definitely let me know as soon as they can get to me. And even just knowing that somebody is there to support you. So whether you have a partner or whether you don't, there's still the ability to say like, hey, something's not okay. I need an ear. I need help. I need support. There are always, no matter how isolated your life is, there are always people that care about you and that want to support you.
Yep.
So figure out who those people are. So build your own personal board of directors that you can go to in those times. And I will say too, going back to our theme of be a good person, one of my love languages, I guess, is reaching out to people and just saying, hey, how's everything going? How are you doing? What's going on? Is there anything I can do to support you? Is there anything that you want, on a scale from 1 to 10, how are you feeling? And if it's not a 7 or an 8 or a 9, why is it a 2 or a 3? Let's talk about it. And giving people that psychological safety and that safe place to do that is dynamic. For friends, family, spouses, partners, that is so important. And so having people that you can have that two-way street with is everything. And it doesn't have to be a ton of people. It could be two. It could be one. But the ability to raise your hand and say, I'm not okay, but then also proactively reach out and create that two-way street of support with other people is game-changing in any relationship, any dynamic, any individual's life.
Yeah, that's true of any relationship. And you and I were sort of talking a little bit about LinkedIn before this, and I've seen LinkedIn sort of become the one-way communication. Like, hey, when I'm open to work, I'm going to be all over that thing, but if I don't need you, then I'm not responding. And that's a good space to show up too and provide content, whether the algorithm lets you see it or not, is just sort of be there all the time, and not just when you need something back. So I think that's true all over the place.
Yeah, I think the two things to unpack there. Number one, don't start asking if you don't give. Like life is better when it's reciprocal. So if you're out there helping people, and I will say that I live and breathe this all the time, because I reach out to people, because I support people, because I am vocal, because I care genuinely, I have more people come to me and say, I want to open doors for you. I want to make introductions for you. I know you're working hard as an entrepreneur. What can I do to help? But it's because they know that I'm willing to give before they even offer that. So the ability to be empathetic and caring for other people will open up doors in that sense. And to the LinkedIn part specifically, because you and I talked about the algorithm and how it's just, it is what it is now. And I've gotten on my soapbox about complaining about it. But what I will say is this. My life mantra is that I want to improve somebody's mood, at least one person a day for the rest of my days on this earth.
Awesome.
And so I take that mentality to social media, because I think so many times LinkedIn, Instagram, whatever your platform of choice is, if you can get one person to see some content that you're sharing that lifts somebody up, that's positive, that's encouraging, that's informational, that's educational, that helps somebody else. And even if it's I posted this morning this great picture from the event that I did in Vegas and was talking about how it was a work in progress and how this really, this picture encompasses all the things that I believe in myself and my message and my mission as this, speaker and coach. And so it's a message of support to others and showing, instead of saying like, hey, look at me, I was cool, I was emceeing I was speaking and DJing at this really cool conference. It was, I want you to believe that you could do the same thing that I did. I'm not special in that route. And so if you can do that, if you can go with this servant mentality, how am I helping others? What am I doing to put things out in the marketplace for the better, for the good, to improve people's life? I don't care if one person sees it. It may be that one person that needed to see it. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten a message from someone saying, I needed to hear this today. Thank you for doing what you do. I don't ever engage with your content, but I engaged today.
Yeah.
I had somebody that showed up. I'm not kidding. I met this person 14 years previously. And I was, we worked together, got to know them. And then they just started following me on LinkedIn, saw my content, never once liked, commented, shared anything for 14 years. Yeah. And then emailed me out of nowhere and said, hey, I'm now the CMO at this medical company. I would love to have you come talk to my team. I've been following your content. I love your consistency of behavior. I love your consistency of supporting and lifting other people up. And it would be my honor to have you come in. Out of nowhere.
Love that.
So don't think that just because the algorithm sucks, that the right person's not seeing what you put out there.
Yep. And empowering others to do the same for others, I think, is huge too. I was scrolling Instagram the other day, and I think I came across an Obama quote where he said, you think you get to a certain point and there's all these important people at the table and they all have all these important opinions, and you think you're going to be at this point where you've like reached the precipice of intelligence. But when you sit down at that table, and I think he said, quote unquote, those are just folk, and we're all just folk, but we all have something to share. Use that voice. Like, don't be reluctant. We're all just people, man. Like, just get out there and say what you need to say and help people out.
Exactly. And I shared this week in this group of leaders. There was somebody that was talking about kind of the mentality, I'll paraphrase a little bit, and the mentality of like, well, why should I speak up? Or why would they want to hear from me? I said, look, every room you walk into, somebody knows something that you don't, but you know something that somebody else doesn't.
Yep.
And your perspective is yours. You literally have a unique perspective of one. Nobody else has experienced what you've experienced, thought the way you've thought, seen what you've seen, and poured all those things into one opinion. So don't think that your opinion is not important, because nobody else has your perspective.
Yep.
So I love that too, because I have also, been on the stage, been, backstage, I've been in meetings with people that on their title or on their awards or on their gravitas are deemed, more important than me or higher profile or celebrities. And at the end of the day, when you treat them just like other people and when you talk to them just like other people and have a conversation and, genuinely care what they have to say, but also have a dynamic between the two of you, I've had better conversations with people that on paper I had no business talking to, just simply because I was confident enough to believe in what I had to say was important.
That is the capital T truth right there. Back to the theme of the show, we talked about the storm, the umbrella moment, and now let's talk a little bit about clear skies. And again, not to imply that you get to this clear sky moment and it's every day, but we do have clear sky days. One thing you said in your pre-work that I loved, every rejection is a redirection. Tell me about that.
Yep. Yeah, and to bring the check-in meeting into this as well, I think most times people think rejection is a shot at their credibility, is a shot at their worth, is a shot at their value. But I will say this: I have, as many times as I've heard yes, I've heard 10 no's for every yes. I got to a point, and I'm not going to say I love being rejected or love hearing no, because it still stings. But instead of saying, "Oh, I'm overpriced, I'm not good enough, I'm not qualified enough, I don't offer something special or important," because I know I do, I'm like, okay, I didn't get that one. What am I going to do with that time that I'm not going to be eaten up with this? What is the opportunity that I have in front of me now? What can I do with that? And I will say that there have been times that I have been rejected for something that I thought was going to be a phenomenal job or a phenomenal opportunity or a phenomenal event, and it didn't work out. But sure enough, something else popped up in its place that I was meant to do. I'm a big believer in the fact that, and this will sound very like philosophical, like our stories are already written. We're just kind of going through the pages day by day.
Sure.
And so I know that there is a path that I should be on. Now, if I look back on my career, and again, no disrespect to the companies or the roles that I had or the teams that I worked with or the people that I was alongside, but was that my path? To an extent, yes, because now I can stand on stage in front of a bunch of different audiences and a bunch of different industries and talk intelligently because I've had a bunch of jobs. I used to feel so guilty about how many jobs I've had in so many different industries. People are like, "You're all over the place." But now it's one of my most invaluable assets as a speaker because I can have a chameleon conversation. I can, like in 1 month, I talked with 2 law firms, a hot dog company, a hairdresser's conference, and one of the highest Fortune 10 company.
Sure.
Tell me who else could do that in a way that I do it with genuine, and not to compare myself, but I'm proud of my background. I'm proud of my path. But every no that I heard pushed me in this direction. So if you imagine almost like bumper cars of sorts or some sort of like nope, this is the way you need to go. You think this is the right route, but actually, if you go that route, you're not going to have the same outcome that you need to have for your happiness and your success.
Yep.
And it's hard because in the moment you're like, oh, dang it. Like, what's wrong with me? But opportunity in your path is saying, no, you just need to come this way. And this is where your greater happiness and your greater success is. If you go that route, you're going the wrong way.
Yep. Yeah, we talk about it a lot on this show is a lot of times the no's are more valuable than the yeses, and you have a lot more to learn from them. And given that they're a lot more seismic typically, or we take them more seriously and we remember the no's more than we remember the yeses, they can really drive us. And I think folks that get stuck in that day-to-day job that they don't necessarily like, it can be life-changing to get that no, because sometimes we just get too comfortable and all of a sudden you're 10 years into a job you don't really like because it's comfortable or the salary is good or whatever. And if somebody would have just told you no 8 years ago, you could be in a completely different place. So seek out the no's. It's almost like you have to elevate your own expectations so that you might get to know, right? So like stop setting your expectations so low that it's easy to meet them. Lift the expectations so they're harder to meet, because when you get that no, you can shift. It's like launching a product. Listen to the market. Make it happen for yourself.
And I think the two secret things I'll share with you and the audience. One, there are times where I go after things that I know I have no business going after, expecting to hear no or expecting to hear nothing at all.
Yeah.
Number one, because if it comes through, then great. And I've gotten some yeses on some things that were huge, but I went into it thinking like, I submitted or I did this, and chances are I'm not going to get it, but that's fine too. Like I would love to have it, but I'm not going to rest my success on that. But what it does is it either provides a really phenomenal core memory because it comes through and you're like, oh my gosh, I did not expect this to happen. But if it doesn't come through, or you get a no, or you get nothing at all, it's almost like shooting baskets. Like you're not going to make every basket, but it conditions you to understand that if you keep trying and keep, changing and improving, that you're going to have a higher success of yes, but it builds your resilience as well.
Yeah, it's immersion.
But the other piece is feedback.
Yep.
And so not everybody's going to give you feedback when they tell you no, but you can always ask for it.
Yep.
So, I appreciate the feedback. I appreciate you reaching back out and letting me know that I wasn't the best candidate for the job, or that we didn't get this contract. If you're comfortable, would you mind just giving me a couple of bullet points? Because I'm always in a constant state of improvement. Would you mind giving me a couple of bullet points of what I could have done better, or what the deciding factors were? But do that on wins too.
Yep.
I'm just curious, what was the deciding factor that made you choose me? Because we often look at the things that we're doing wrong, but we hardly do it for the same things that we're doing right.
Interesting.
Because you feel overly confident. You feel like you're bragging. You feel like you're doubling down on your success, which feels weird because society tells us that.
Yep.
But if you say, I'm just curious, like, thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm thrilled to work with you. I'm just curious what your deciding factors were. What was it that set me apart, that made you choose me? I mean, that's a fun conversation to have, because we get terrified about asking for negative feedback, but why wouldn't you get excited about asking for positive feedback?
Yeah, you just blew my mind. I've never done that. I've never won a pitch and said, tell me more. Like, how did we win this? What differentiated us? Like, what drove the decision? And that would be incredibly valuable, because those are the things you have to double down on next time and do better. Yeah.
Exactly. And you don't have to write back in the email that they send you, or, say like, thanks for the win. Why us? Just, you could always do it in a planning call. You can do it on site. I've done it before where we were doing sound check at an event one time, and we were just standing there waiting on somebody else to do something. And I just leaned over to the event planner. I said, I'm just curious, like, I'm thrilled to be here and I'm really excited to be here. I'm just curious, like, what about it? What about me stood out from the rest?
Love that.
Like, oh my gosh, like your level of care and your level of empathy and the relationship that you built, and you're not high maintenance. You're not a diva, even though your hair screams diva. Like, it's all about finding those things that you're doing right. And to your point, I learned that, during sound check. So don't think that I didn't take my empathy, my care, my engagement, and my lack of diva-ness to that stage in a higher capacity. Because to your point, like, if you know that you're doing those things right, you know that they're differentiators, you know that they're positive, you can double down in that instance or in future ones.
Sure. Rich, we like to close with a little advice for the young folks out there. So to the people just starting their careers, whether they're in your space, public speaking, emceeing, etc., or not, what advice do you have for the young people out there just getting their careers started?
Number one, I'll go back to the theme that we had earlier: be kind, be good to people. The more kind you are, the more opportunities will come your way. People will be thinking about you in a positive light, so you never know who that is. Don't be afraid to reach out to people. Don't be afraid to reach out to someone who has the success that you want. I've reached out to people before that are at the point that I want to be, and just said, hey, I admire what you're doing. I love, following you and your content. You're what I'm aiming for from a goal perspective. Can I borrow a couple of minutes of your time just to find out what you did that you would advise somebody else to do?
Yep.
And 9 times out of 10, I'm not going to say everybody's come back and said yes, but I've had more yeses than nos on that.
Yeah.
Because people want to see other people succeed, and they also want to help people out. I do that all the time with people, with speakers and people that want to grow, but don't ever be afraid to say, hey, you're where I want to be. Can I ask for your advice on a couple of things?
It's also flattering.
That never hurts.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's extremely flattering.
Yeah. Yeah, if you called me up and you're like, JR, I love what you're doing. Can we just grab a coffee? I'd be the first guy like, heck yeah, I'll join you for coffee. Yeah, don't be afraid to ask.
And come prepared with thoughtful questions. Like, I think that is a lost art.
Yeah.
Be thoughtful, be mindful, do a little research. I always shout out my friend Sam McKenna in Washington, D.C. She has this theory called Show Me You Know Me. Spend some time, get to know who you are, JR. And when you sit down with that coffee, say, I saw in your background that you did this, or I would love to, ask you a question of this. But come with some thoughtful questions, as opposed to, how'd you do it? And can you give me your playbook? And can you hire me? Like, come in with some very thoughtful, thought out questions, because you want to make that person's time, it's important and valuable to them, and it should be to you. So treat it as such.
Absolutely. Rich, how can people find you?
They can find me at richbracken.com. All of my social media content, information about me is all there. Everything from YouTube to Spotify to Instagram to LinkedIn, I'm all on richbracken.com.
Amazing. This is a great conversation. I love chatting with you and just sort of taking advantage and getting some information for myself too. But like I said, we go way back to that meeting at MPI. We've had you here at 180 before to talk to my team about the value of emotional intelligence, and you've been a great friend and ally. So I appreciate you coming on the show.
Anytime, man. You're a dear friend to me, and I appreciate you for having me on the show, for the connection that we've had over the years. But it's an honor.
Awesome. Thanks, Rich.
Thanks, Cher.
All right, that was Rich Bracken. You can find him, like he said, at richbracken.com. I'll put that in the description here today. An amazing conversation. I could go back and forth with Rich all day and just ask a ton of questions. So again, appreciate him coming on the show. Appreciate y'all listening. And like Rich said, just be nice, people.
Do you ever have one of those moments? Everything's right. Then the rug gets pulled out. Sideways rain.